In the shadow of Madagascar's towering mountains, under the burning tropical sun, rose a queen whose reign would strike fear into the hearts of her people and echo throughout history. Her name was Ranavalona I, a ruler whose sheer brutality and iron will earned her the chilling title, the Mad Queen of Madagascar. But was she truly mad, or was she a woman fighting to keep her throne in an unforgiving world of political intrigue and colonial threats? To understand Ranavalona's terrifying legacy is to enter a world where power, paranoia, and cruelty intertwine to form a reign unlike any other. Born in 1778 into a relatively modest background, Ranavalona was not initially destined for the throne. Her path to power began when her father discovered and foiled an assassination plot against the then King of Madagascar, Andrian Ampoinamarina. As a reward for her father's loyalty, Ranavalona was adopted into the royal family, betrothed to the king's son, Radama I, thus positioning herself for future rule. Radama I ascended the throne in 1810, ushering in an era of modernization and European influence, particularly through the spread of Christianity and the introduction of foreign technologies. But when Radama I died childless in 1828, his widow Ranavalona wasted no time. Tradition dictated that a male heir from a collateral branch of the family would assume power. Ranavalona, however, had other plans. She quickly consolidated support among the nobility, eliminated rivals, and had herself declared queen. From the moment she seized the throne, her reign would become synonymous with fear, oppression, and bloodshed. Where her late husband had sought modernization, Ranavalona sought isolation. Where Radama had embraced European influences, Ranavalona was determined to cut off Madagascar from the encroaching Western world. She viewed foreign influence, particularly Christianity, as a threat to her absolute rule. Ranavalona's paranoia about foreign influence grew into a defining characteristic of her reign. She believed that Christianity, introduced by European missionaries, was a tool of colonization, and in many ways, she wasn't wrong. The European presence on the island was growing, and colonial ambitions were on the rise throughout Africa. To Ranavalona, these missionaries were foreign agents sowing the seeds of dissent among her people. So, in 1835, she ordered the complete expulsion of Christian missionaries, closed schools run by foreigners, and outlawed Christianity itself. But simply banishing foreign influence wasn't enough. Ranavalona wanted to eradicate any traces of it from her kingdom. Any of her subjects who continued to practice Christianity were subjected to unspeakable punishments. Christian converts were publicly tortured and executed. Many were forced to drink the poisonous juice of the tangina tree as part of a deadly ordeal. Those who survived were declared innocent, but those who perished, and many did, were deemed guilty. It was a brutal test of faith, and few made it through alive. Under Ranavalona's orders, her government waged a campaign of terror, with spies monitoring the population for signs of disloyalty. Villagers were forced to swear oaths to the queen, renouncing Christianity and pledging undying loyalty to her. Those suspected of harboring Christian sympathies were subjected to public trials and executions. One of the most infamous tools of Ranavalona's terror was the tangina ordeal, a deadly ritual that became a cornerstone of her judicial system. This ordeal was both a form of justice and a means of control, striking fear into the hearts of her subjects. The poison from the tangina tree was given to anyone accused of crimes or suspected of disloyalty. After ingesting the poison, the accused would be forced to vomit, and their fate depended on whether 3 pieces of chicken skin they had swallowed came up intact. If the pieces were regurgitated whole, they were considered innocent. If not, they were executed, often immediately. It's estimated that under Ranavalona's reign, as many as 20% of her subjects died as a result of the tangina ordeal alone. But this was only one aspect of her bloody rule. Ranavalona's reign wasn't solely defined by religious persecution. She also imposed a brutal system of forced labor on her people. To maintain her power and avoid dependency on foreign aid, she instituted the Fanompoana, a system of unpaid labor that forced her subjects to work on state projects. Thousands of men, women, and children were sent to work on building roads, palaces, and military fortifications, often under horrifying conditions. The labor camps were plagued by disease, exhaustion, and starvation. Workers were routinely beaten, and those who attempted to flee were executed. The Queen's ambition was to keep Madagascar self-sufficient and to avoid any reliance on European trade, but the human cost was astronomical. Entire villages were decimated by forced labor requirements. It's believed that up to 50% of Madagascar's population died during Ranavalona's reign, either from forced labor, executions, or famine. In one particularly deadly campaign, Ranavalona ordered her army to march into the eastern forests to subjugate rebellious tribes. The journey through the dense jungle was grueling, and her soldiers were ill-prepared for the harsh conditions. Tens of thousands of men perished from disease, hunger, and attacks by wild animals. Yet despite the losses, Ranavalona refused to relent, driving her people to the brink of collapse in her quest for dominance. While Ranavalona's internal policies were brutal, she was equally defiant on the international stage. She was fiercely protective of Madagascar's sovereignty and refused to bend to the growing pressure from European colonial powers. During her reign, she skillfully played European powers against one another, maintaining Madagascar's independence at a time when much of Africa was being carved up by imperialists. Her defiance of Western powers reached its peak during the French expedition of 1829, when France attempted to invade Madagascar to establish colonial control. Ranavalona's forces successfully repelled the invaders, inflicting significant casualties on the French. This victory further solidified her position as an unyielding ruler who would go to any lengths to protect her kingdom from foreign domination. However, her isolationist policies came at a price. By cutting off foreign trade and expelling missionaries, Madagascar's economy suffered. The kingdom became increasingly isolated, and Ranavalona's insistence on self-sufficiency left her people struggling to survive. As the years went on, Ranavalona's rule became even more despotic. Her paranoia deepened, and she surrounded herself with loyal nobles who acted as enforcers of her increasingly brutal policies. She ruled for 33 years, and during that time, Madagascar remained isolated from the rest of the world, with foreign powers eyeing the island from a distance, waiting for an opportunity to strike. But as Ranavalona grew older, her iron grip on the kingdom began to weaken. Her son, Rikoto, who would later become King Radama II, disagreed with many of his mother's policies, particularly her isolationism and her persecution of Christians. Rikoto secretly maintained correspondence with French officials, signaling his willingness to modernize and open Madagascar to European trade. He quietly plotted to reverse many of his mother's harshest policies once he assumed the throne. However, Ranavalona, ever the watchful ruler, kept her son under close surveillance, ensuring that no plots to overthrow her could succeed during her lifetime. But even she could not reign forever. In 1861, after more than 3 decades of rule, Ranavalona I died at the age of 83. Her death marked the end of one of the most violent and oppressive reigns in history. The legacy of Queen Ranavalona I is as complex as it is chilling. To some, she was a mad tyrant whose reign of terror decimated her own people and left Madagascar economically crippled and isolated. Her brutal methods of maintaining power, from the Tangina ordeal to the forced labor camps, are remembered as some of the most inhumane policies in history. Her reign was marked by bloodshed, suffering, and fear. Yet to others, Ranavalona was a fierce defender of Madagascar's independence at a time when European powers were expanding their empires across Africa. Her refusal to bow to foreign influence kept Madagascar free from colonization during her lifetime, and she skillfully used diplomacy and military might to maintain her sovereignty. In a world where many African rulers were being subjugated by European forces, Ranavalona stood as a symbol of resistance, albeit a brutal one. In the years following her death, Madagascar would undergo significant changes. Her son, Radama II, attempted to reverse many of her policies, opening the kingdom to foreign trade and missionaries. But his reign was short-lived, and Madagascar eventually fell under French control in the late 19th century. Today, Ranavalona remains a controversial figure in Madagascar's history. Was she a tyrant driven mad by paranoia, or a brilliant strategist who preserved her kingdom's independence at all costs? Perhaps she was both. What is undeniable, however, is that Ranavalona I ruled with a level of ruthlessness that few monarchs in history have matched. Her reign is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked power, and her story continues to fascinate and horrify historians and scholars alike. The Mad Queen of Madagascar will forever be remembered as one of history's most notorious and enigmatic rulers. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to join our community of history lovers. Let's embark on this incredible voyage together, unraveling the chronicles of history one story at a time. Until next time, thanks for watching.